What's up, guys? Jay Martin here, CEO of Cambridge House. Now, today we are diving deep into the health science sector. Now, if you're a subscriber or a regular viewer, you know that most of what I talk about is macro finance and the commodity sector, and my portfolio is very much weighted in that direction. But I also think that the health science industry will become the biggest bull market of my lifetime. And here's why. The entire world is your market. Who doesn't want to feel better, live longer, think faster, all of that good stuff? I know I do. And so I'm right now actively searching for investment opportunities in this industry. Now, the first thing we have to do is understand the macro, right? What are the state of things right now? And so I've invited the voice of authority when it comes to hormone optimization, Jay Campbell, onto the show to join me today. Now, Jay's an ex-fitness competitor. He's a multiple times best-selling author. He's the host of the Jay Campbell podcast. He's an entrepreneur in the sector, among many other things. And we dive deep today into hormone health, the risk factors, and the opportunities that result from those. So I really enjoyed this conversation. It is a bit off the beaten path if you're a regular viewer, but stick with it to the end because we get into some very exciting new developments in functional medicine that I think provide some massive upside for investors. And I'm looking to deploy capital in this industry once I find the right spot, the right opportunity. So if you enjoy this, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, join the tribe, and thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoy.
What I love to do is introduce the right people to the right people, assemble the smartest people I can think of or reach out to carry that conversation, and that's exactly what I've done today.
Please give my panel a round of applause. Welcome.
Okay, guys, Jay Martin here, CEO of Cambridge House, and I'm joined right now by Jay Campbell. Jay is a multiple times best-selling author covering really the whole spectrum of some of the most important health concepts that I follow, everything from hormone optimization through to intermittent fasting and everything in between. Ex-fitness competitor, current entrepreneur in the health sector. Jay, I'm really excited to have you on the show and pick your brain on a handful of topics, so thanks for making the time.
Jay, man, it's an honor. I'm very humble and privileged to be here. And whenever I get a chance to speak with a high vibration person like Jay, I'm all in, bro.
I love that. Well, it's timely. So anybody who subscribes to this channel, you guys know most of what I talk about is macro finance. And I'm an investor, as are my followers and my subscribers, and we're looking for the smartest home for our capital. This year, that conversation has been dominated by the commodity sector. But if you subscribe to my newsletter, I constantly beat the health science drum. I still think health science will be the biggest bull market of my lifetime. But it's hard to find investment opportunities. And step one is understanding the macro. Just like any sector we're looking for opportunities in, you have to understand the macro first. What are the big trends, the big picture ideas, and then you can build your investment thesis off of that. Jay's going to help us do that today, so I'm really excited to dive in. Underlying all of my content is the sovereign mindset, that philosophy that you got to take control. No one's got your back. That's not a bad thing. It gives you the power. And we apply that to our wealth creation, our portfolios, and I apply that to my health practices. So I wanted to start there with you, Jay. We are fed a lot of information from a lot of sources, hard to know who to trust, what to do. So just talk to me first about the mistake you can make by not getting really proactive when it comes to optimizing your own health.
It's a great question. And again, I'm honored to be here, Jay. Appreciate the opportunity. As always, when I come on people's podcasts, I'm very grateful. So in that energy of gratitude, I can tell you that in this day and age right now, and obviously today is April 27, 2021, we are being bombarded. Okay. In every major city, in every first world country, our endocrine systems are under siege. Okay. And what I mean by that is that, the glands of the body that regulates your hormones and your metabolism and all that stuff are just being annihilated right now from plastic in the water. I mean, look, I drink the best water on earth, but it's in a plastic bottle. From the blue light from these panels that you and I are interviewing each other on right now, all the way down to the high polycarbon resin. This is military grade spec resin on our cell phone devices that every time we touch our fingers to, we have the polymer bleed in through the cuticle into the skin and obviously into our biological systems. And that, which nobody talks about, causes all sorts of havoc. So the point is that realistically, it is very difficult right now in the modern age to avoid the annihilation, again, this onslaught of so many different, biochemical, particulates in our environment that are invading us. And without being proactive, you said I like to say empowered, sovereign, and free. That's my 3 words. You have to be proactive to avoid these things, because if you don't, you can literally be overrun. And as you know, Jay, there's a lot of people walking around, unfortunately, today in society who are almost, basically Autobots, automatons. They wake up, they go to their cubicle, they check out, it's the same thing, rinse and repeat. And they're not proactive, obviously, in any capacity in their life. So, I'm obviously, just like you, a very big believer in being proactive and taking ownership.
It's interesting what you say, and it's hard to step outside of that because, like you said, it's the plastic and that carries your water. It's the case that holds your phone. It's the screens we're both utilizing right now. I got to ask, are those blue light blocking glasses you're wearing right now?
Of course, and I got to give my big good friend. These are Swannies, so Mr. Swanwick is getting a little shout out right now. But yeah, dude, I mean, I would have told you, like, before we started this conversation, that's almost something you have to do when you're on screens, because I mean, dude, my eyesight, I used to have fighter pilot vision, and in the last 2.5 years, being on these giant monitors, my eyesight has gone to what. And, I actually just had a test last week at Costco, and it's like, dude, you need to get contacts or, corrective surgery now for when you're driving at night, because I can't even read the street signs. It's crazy.
Right. Yeah. It's funny. I don't know what mine are. I'm not wearing it right now, but Jay, I just started wearing it like a year ago. And when I know I have a marathon Zoom day in front of me, back-to-back meetings for, 6 to 8 hours, it's amazing the difference in the brain fatigue.
Right. Oh, it's insane, dude. If I did not wear these, I'm like you, man. I'm all day, on screens, on calls, talking to customers, clients, blah, blah, blah. And if I don't wear these, it's massively noticeable that night. And truthfully, my sleep is disruptive. I even say that you should wear, the amber colored at night. So if you're still working, and obviously you want to get your life where you're not working after, but if you're working, at night before you go to sleep, you should be wearing something that completely filters all of the light so that you can go to sleep, because your brain is still, spinning for hours.
Following that thread, like what's the consequence? Why should we care, Jay, about these environmental factors? When you say they're compromising the endocrine system, what's occurring?
So it's a great question. Basically, why we should care, like first order effects. You are looking at right now a massive downturn in fertility. Okay. Men and women in their late 30s and early 40s, which traditionally, there was nothing to do other than just to, practice on making babies. You have kids. And now it's a big issue. You speak to any physician who's a fertility specialist or even works in that field, and they'll tell you it's very, very difficult now for men and women, again, in the normal stages of childbirth, which is early 30s to late 30s, and even just getting pregnant now. So that's the bigger picture first order effect, is all of these things are endocrine disruptors, chemicals, particulates, whatever, blue light, are affecting the birth rate. So the birth rate right now is the lowest birth rate ever, right? So if you really want to look again at a macro, trend, the propagation of our species is declining, and again, I write about this in, my books. The Hebrew University study, shows over 30-year study on all the continents. I think it was a population cohort of like 47,000 men around the world, show a massive decline in LH, FSH, which is luteinizing hormone, follicle stimulating hormone, and of course, testosterone. Right. So we now understand, and again, this is not conspiracy theory, this is science, provable, researchable, peer-reviewed stuff, that in the last 60 years, the average total testosterone level has declined almost by 300%. So what that means is that our forefathers were walking around with like natural testosterone levels in the thousands of plus. And now, as you know, most men who get tested, and that's the biggest issue, is most men have no idea that this is a problem. Right. But the ones that are being tested are finding their testosterone anywhere from like 200 to 400, which is insane.
Right. And again, because that's commonplace, right? It's sort of normalized, and we don't look at it as a risk factor, but it is. And just to clarify, I think testosterone is often associated with bodybuilders or, mixed martial artists or whatever, sure. But, testosterone levels affect everything from your sense of adventure, your sense of curiosity, It's far beyond the athletic application. And so talk to me about some symptoms on that thread, Jay. Low testosterone, how does that manifest?
So just to add to what you said, optimized testosterones actually allow a man to be strategic and tactical. So not only does it actually increase cognition, both short-term and long-term memory, but that strategical and tactical aspect of it is like proven. There's a lot of studies, like very, very high-level Ivy League universities have like done this research in the 60s and 70s. But symptoms of a testosterone deficiency are brain fog, okay, lack of energy, horrible sleep patterns, obviously insulin resistance, metabolic disorder, getting a belly, an inability to actually even work out anymore, like by the time you're in your early to mid 30s. And by the way, I have to be honest now, because obviously I work with some of the top doctors and blessed to have that. They're seeing this in 20-year-old guys now, Jay. I mean, 20 to 25. Video game addictions, porn addictions, anything that rewires the dopaminergic signaling pathways in the brain can cause a testosterone deficiency and a break in the feedback loop of what is considered the hypogonadal axis. So we're literally looking at a situation right now where men all over the world are hormonally malfunctioning.
Now, the scary part about that is when you follow the trajectory. I mean, you threw out some numbers like over the last 60 years, average test levels in men have dropped by 300%. You're now seeing massively compromised test levels in men as young as 20 to 25.
Yes.
Important to note that that's not where this will end. You forecast this forwards. I always ask the question, what happens next, right? And it creates a pretty dramatic and horrifying scenario that for whatever reason isn't being discussed very much, I find. Any thoughts on that? Why don't people talk about this?
It's a great question. I have a lot of thoughts. So the Hebrew University study says that men will be completely extinct. So the XY chromosome will be basically gone by the year 2040. Now, that was a study that they published in 2015. So I would tell you and argue, and I could make a very cogent debate that that's going to happen way sooner. And again, it's because the technology and obviously all these biohazards and things that are happening is happening now at such an accelerated rate, with integrated circuits and stuff like that, and how fast computer and, exponentially things compound. It's happening way faster. And so what does that really mean? Well, I mean, if men can't get women pregnant, then what does that mean? I mean, does that mean the species goes extinct? I would argue not. I would, argue that a lot of people, and I'm not a supporter of this, are pushing for this transhumanist, outcome where it's a man-machine merge. Again, I'm more on the side of humanity keeping its sovereignty and, its humanity intact. But there's a large group of people, and I don't have to name their names, you know who they are, who want to see us become biobots. So, maybe that is inevitable, because if we can't continue to procreate, it's very scary, man. But again, the science is out there, and mainstream does not talk about this. They absolutely refuse to talk about it.
So those are some daunting statements. The study from the Hebrew University talking about, I guess, more or less humans' inability to reproduce naturally as soon as the year 2040. Now, somebody watching this could be like, okay, this is conspiracy crap. What are you guys talking about? Jay, get back on the macro finance train here. But look, here's the thing, it's our job to pick up on these early indicators of anything, right? And I think this is one worth paying attention to. 2040 is both a long ways away and very, very, very near simultaneously, depending on how you analyze trends.
Well, you said it correctly, though. You said naturally. So the people that will argue the transhumanist side will say, oh, no, we'll synthetically create blank, right? We'll artificially optimize men's testosterone and fertility, which again is the semen through follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone, and will make babies. But I mean, bro, and I don't want to rabbit hole, but if you want to go a little bit darker, the mRNA vaccines, which is now also washing off in the water supply. And this is not conspiratorial. Again, my business partner makes that stuff. That's what he does. They don't know the second and third order effects of mRNA vaccines in the water supply. Now, we do know the second and third order effects of birth control in the water supply, and that's the men of planet Earth in 2021. very, very estrogen, laced, low testosterone, which we've already discussed, low fertility hormone levels, obviously a massive disaster in fertility. So what does it foretell? I mean, I don't think it's anything less negative than what birth control in the water supply did. And by the way, if anybody wants to fact check me on that information, there's a great book by, the great doctor, Mayo Clinic researcher, Dr. Anthony Jay, another Jay. His book, Estrogeneration. This is all proven and clinically backed up and peer reviewed of what happens to fish in the water supply in North America now. After they put them into the wild, in 1 year, the male fish become feminized. They become totally female fish. So again, this is due to this massive, all these particulates and these endocrine disrupting chemicals that are everywhere. They're so pervasive. They're unavoidable. So again, my argument was we don't even know what's going to happen with the mRNA stuff because that's in the water supply now or will be heavily within the next year.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Now, thank you for walking us through that. The reason I wanted to, cover what I call the macro, there's sort of the bigger picture, some very real environmental threats that are changing us as human beings and creating a crisis. I don't want to dwell too much more on the crisis or the future of the crisis because what I want to focus on is where's the opportunity, right? Let's get back to now how I approach these. How can we create an opportunity or find an opportunity in this? And that's one of the main reasons I continue to say health science will be the biggest bull market of my lifetime because the world is your market. Who doesn't want to feel better, live longer, think faster, all of that stuff.
Yep.
And there's more and more money piling into this now than ever before. Follow the smart money. And when I see that kind of sentiment from some real smart dollars, right? I see the avalanche of cash moving. I want to get there first.
For sure.
So let's talk about that a little bit. How are these scenarios? And I'm talking specifically. Let's stay on this thread. Low testosterone in males right now. What's currently being done, if anything, Jay, to address this in our society? You go to your doctor. I'm feeling got the brain fog. I'm feeling a bit depressed, low energy, and I'm only 36, 37 years old. What's going on? What's the typical response?
So again, a great question. This is a really good show, Jay. When Jay and Jay get together, this is what happens. So it's the most important question because the average person, let's say who watches the show, who's an investor, is well-to-do, sophisticated, affluent person, they can't go to their local doctor. Okay, it's very unrealistic to think that they can, and most times they can't even go to an endocrinologist or a specialized urologist because those guys don't truly have an understanding of how to evaluate a man for a testosterone deficiency and then optimize them through using therapeutic testosterone. Obviously, I've written two, game-changing, world-selling, breakaway books that the entire clinical community around the world now utilizes, from, kind of like a standard patient care model. But in truth, you have to seek out a specialist. Okay. And what I mean by a specialist is just somebody who's been working with managing male and female endocrine systems for 10 to 15 years. I wouldn't work with anybody under that because this is a very, very niched and nuanced field. And as I told you, and I travel to all of the medical conferences, right? So I understand what's being taught. There is no standard patient care. Okay. They don't go to medical school and teach andrology. If there was a scientific name on hormone optimization, it would be that. Even the greatest researchers in the field and the scientists like Dr. Morgentaler, Abraham Morgentaler, who's done all the prostate research on testosterone, he's not the greatest doctor to work with. He's just a brilliant researcher that understands the merits and the values of utilizing therapeutic testosterone. So for a man who's watching this show and has a deficiency, he's got brain fog, which would be the number one symptom. He just doesn't feel his best anymore. You got to seek out a physician who has been managing, male and female endocrine systems for at least, in my recommendation, 10 years. I mean, obviously I can give you links of folks in North America that you can push, but there still, unfortunately, is just not enough acceptance in the medical field for male and female to go down this pathway. So again, it's just, like I said, very nuanced and you have to do your homework, but you cannot think that you can go to a managed care or PPO care physician, PPO insurance physician, and think that you're going to get optimal treatment because it's just not going to happen.
Okay. So let's walk forward a little bit. I think that once we hit that dead end, that's where entrepreneurs like yourself step in and start creating solutions. And you've got a very cool business right now. You're attacking what we just discussed before I hit record. I thought it was a $10 billion industry. It's $16.3 billion industry. That's the hair regrowth. How would you define that before we jump?
Yeah, exactly. It's basically hair loss, stoppage, and regrowth. Like how is that done naturally versus pharmaceutical means?
Okay. Now I want to talk about what that is, because I think peptides, and we're going to talk about what a peptide is and why I think they're maybe some of the most exciting ideas, compounds coming out of functional medicine right now. But the reason they're exciting are because, correct me if I'm wrong here, what are your thoughts on generalized exogenous hormone replacement therapies, Jay? And do peptides provide a solution that de-risks a little bit? Do you want any comments on that?
Yeah. So what was the first part of your question? I'm sorry. What was it? I mean, I understood you asked about peptides, but what was the first part?
Let's start with what a peptide is.
Okay. Basically, peptides are short chains of amino acids in sequence that can be manipulated synthetically, in a lab, in a compound pharmacy to produce all sorts of amazing benefits, from a health aspect. And what I mean, Jay, it's mind blowing. I mean, you can not regulate, but you can optimize brain health. You can lower body fat, reduce body fat, suppress inflammation, increase immunity, build muscle. There's all sorts of amazing things that peptides can do. The issue now in North America specifically, and even in the United States mostly, is that the FDA is just limited in their capacity and their manpower to truly regulate the compound pharmacies who are manufacturing peptides. And so right now, if you wanted to use, a peptide, there's 5 or 6, and, I could be wrong, things have changed in the last 5 or 6 months, but there's only 5 or 6 that are actually approved by the FDA for specific uses. So the majority of these peptides are just off label. So the doctor writes a script, whoever your physician is, for this peptide. And of course, it's totally illegal, but there's still no regulation in the industry. So it's a very gray market business where it's at currently. But as you said, hundreds of millions of dollars are going into the research and development, the studying of what these things do. It even goes beyond peptides into exosomes and, PRP, which is platelet, rich protein. There's all sorts of biomedical wonders and advancements and enhancements that are out there now in the field of medicine that can truly help people revitalize and rejuvenate every aspect of their physical being.
Okay, now let me back up a little bit there and give you my dummy version of what I think a peptide is, and then you sort of layer on where I'm on and where I'm off. Because what excited me about peptides as a functional medicine is essentially their ability to restart our cells, right? They're essentially amino acid chains, but instruction manuals to reteach our cells how to perform as they did in our youth. As we age, we just stop producing the things that we need. We stop producing melatonin, insulin, growth hormone, all the stuff that keeps us vitally young. And so am I on the mark here? Peptides essentially retrain us at a cellular level to produce the hormones that we had in abundance when we were young. Is that relatively accurate?
That's absolutely correct. Probably a really good analogy would be growth hormone, right? So the growth hormone naturally is secreted by our pituitary. And as we get older, the pulsatile diurnal release of growth hormone lessens or cessates.
Right.
You can use various peptides. I'll just name a few of them, like ipamorelin or testosterone, to increase endogenous, which is obviously the body's production of growth hormone, to synthesize or enhance or improve all of the things that growth hormone would normally do naturally. So again, a lot of people as they age, lose the functioning or the maximal functioning or optimal functioning of the growth hormone. So they would use those peptides to produce all of those benefits that growth hormone gives them, like fat loss, better sleep, skin elasticity, well-being feelings, that kind of stuff.
Okay, now where's the business opportunity? Because again, correct me if I'm wrong, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to get a patent on a peptide. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, very correct. Actually, the Russians have, yes, that's without going to rabbit hole, yes.
Okay. before we get in any deeper, talking about risk factors. Are there risk factors with peptides? If so, what would they be?
So it's a good question. Again, there's risk factors with anything that you would utilize that would be considered a drug or a peptide again, but the difference is obviously therapeutic usage versus abuse, right? You know how they say the difference between a pill and a poison is the dosage. Yeah. So it's essentially when you're using a peptide, you know, in the context of health and longevity, and you're administering therapeutic, what I would call surgically precise micro dosages, the risks are very, very minimal. Now, there are some peptides that are obviously experimental. And, you know, the risk would probably be a little bit higher than the reward over time because we don't understand the second and third order effects. But the majority of peptides that are used right now out there have been used for 30 years. Even in the underground world versus in the clinical world. And, you know, the side effects, if anything, are so minimal and nominal that I wouldn't worry or even want to even mention them.
Okay. So then my next question is, where is the business opportunity? If we can talk about some of the most common complications that we're facing from a health standpoint, and hair loss is a great example because you're building a business right here, right now. And if I were to describe you've taken two peptides, correct, combined them into what would be a proprietary formula, but still attaining a patent for that would be near impossible. So the value in your business is the patent on the delivery system. Is that correct?
It is correct. You're a pretty smart guy, Jay. Not many people can say what you just said. I mean, very seriously, like, a lot of doctors I talk to would not be able to say that. But I will just like mildly correct you. Like one of our particulate ingredients, not particulate, but just ingredients is the nanomolecule carbon-60, which is C60. Okay. And that's not considered technically a peptide, but for the practices of what you explained, it absolutely is because it's a peptide-based formulation.
Okay. And that answers a big question for me because I attended the International Peptide Summit in Las Vegas. That would have been like 2 years ago, I suppose. I think it was.
That's crazy, man. I wasn't there, but I was at Seed's next one in St. Petersburg. So you went to the first one and I went to the second one.
Yeah. It was so funny. When I went to register, I couldn't because they made you identify what kind of medical practitioner you were, and I'm not. Right. So then I called them and they were so confused why I wanted to attend. They're like, sorry, I don't understand. What kind of doctor are you? Like, no, I'm not. I'm just a nerd. I just want to go.
Right. Exactly. That's what my business partner always say. He goes, I'm just chief nerd. Right. Just chief nerd. Biotechnical engineer, not a physician. No, it's funny because that's the same thing, man. We've been experiencing forever because obviously I'm not a practitioner clinician either. But it's funny, that whole thing, that was all, funded by a big compounding pharmacy and Seeds, and that whole thing went under. I mean, all this regulation in the last year, there's literally only one, governing peptide body on the planet left. And obviously a lot of it also was just due to the attrition from COVID and, people not being able to travel and the seminar industry blowing up. But, I just came back from AMMG, which is the second biggest medical conference globally. It was just last weekend, not this past weekend, but the weekend before in Miami at the Trump Doral Hotel. And there was a lot of physicians that attended, a lot of big name people were there. And, the rumor, in the room making the rounds is that it's going to be at least another 3 to 5 years before, the big governing bodies really can get in and step in and mandately govern peptides. So it's wild, wild west. It's buyer beware. It's obviously if you're working with a compounding pharmacy and your physician is writing you a prescription for some of these things, just make sure that, you trust the compounding pharmacy, right? And I mean, again, it's a pharmacy. It's not like you're buying, underground, research chemicals, but it's still very, very much right now, like kind of the wild, wild west.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, we've as in my community here has been through a few of those, right? Early to the cannabis space, early to the crypto space. It was the wild, wild west in both cases where entrepreneurs, they just move faster than regulators.
Absolutely.
They will.
Dude, totally. And that's what's happening. If we could talk about like our stuff, if you can't, whenever you want to get into it, I'm happy to go into it. But, even beyond our stuff, it's already now with psychedelics.
Yeah.
People are now talking about, 5-MeO DMT in capsules. I mean, it's already happening in Canada. I'm sure you're already hearing of it.
Yeah.
I'm a big plant medicine user. I have very significant experience doing that stuff. And I know a lot about the science. I've written a very, very deep, 8,000 word blog that's actually sourced on Arrowhead and all of those different places. So I'm, really experienced in that field. But peptides, to answer your original question, that's where the money should really go now, because we have data. We have 20 to 30 years of research. We have, anecdotal studies. We have people out there in the marketplace who have literally, regrown nerve fiber bundles, right? Like we've had people who have been hit with baseball bats in the head and had severe brain aneurysm and swelling and all that. And we've used BPC 157 and TB 500 and these other amazing peptides to completely heal and bring people back to health. And, my company, obviously you said hair loss, it's a $16.3 billion a year industry in just the West. Okay.
Yeah.
The way it has always gone is that the pharmaceutical industry intended to inhibit dihydrotestosterone, which is obviously your hormonal pathway. And now we know scientifically that it doesn't work. I mean, when I say it doesn't work, there's some mild benefits to it, but inhibiting hormonal pathways only causes problems for the person, right? When you start inhibiting dihydrotestosterone with drugs like finasteride or dutasteride, or even the over-the-counter preparations like minoxidil, Rogaine, all those things, you screw with a man's sense of well-being. Obviously, you also screw with their sexual functioning. Dihydrotestosterone should never be inhibited or limited or suppressed. So, my company, which is a Sear Custom, the product that we have, which you kind of mentioned already, is GHK-Cu copper peptide combined with nanomolecule carbon-60. And when you put it in a person's scalp, and it's obviously delivered topically, it does two things. And it does two things better than anything else. It increases angiogenesis, which is the stimulation of new red blood cells to the scalp. So again, locally delivered. And then that's from the GHK-Cu copper peptide. The nanomolecule carbon-60 functions as a super antioxidant, dismutase in the scalp, which is like a giant suction portal, opening everything, allowing the GHK-Cu to be absorbed. Even, it's like literally angiogenesis on steroids. So those two combined massively regrows follicular roots, stimulating new hair growth. And here's the crazy part, Jay. And again, we have science to say this and to prove this. And obviously, as you said, we have a provisional patent right now, but this actually works for people that have genetic predispositions to hair loss. So if you have what is called androgenic alopecia, which you probably have, I did, you can use this product as long as you still have follicles on the scalp, and it will regrow your hair, provided that you live a low inflammation lifestyle. As you know, you can't be out there pounding Mountain Dew and Cheetos and slamming, brewskis on the weekend and think that you're going to get the results that someone like me, who is very, very low inflammation lifestyle and obviously takes my health seriously, receive.
Okay. Now, what is protecting you from competition, Jay, when you get to your business? And I'm obviously pointing to.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a great question. I mean, really, honestly, brother, really nothing. I mean, I can talk to guys who mentor me, who've sold 7, to 10 skincare brands for 8 figures each. And all of them will tell me that anyone in mainland China can reverse engineer your product in blank, right?
Sure.
So, what protects us is ultimately the delivery system, right? Yeah. So my business partner and master formulator, Nick Andrews, is a brilliant biochemical engineer. He's the head chief nerd, as he calls himself. And he can develop very patentable, IP defensible formulations through delivery systems that would protect us long term. But even then, again, the very smart people in the skincare and the hair loss industry will tell you that it's so simple today for, again, I'm just using the Chinese, as a typical example, to just reverse engineer something. So ultimately, where this gets to where it needs to go is, as always in everything, is the ingenuity of the people behind the product. And then obviously the people that you're buying from, the trust, the social proof, and all that stuff, which, we've been in the market space now for 19 months. Actually, Oxano, which is the hair product, it's not even a year I mean, we're not even in the market for a year, but we have so many influential people using it right now, and we're this close to scaling. I feel like it's just where we're at right now is kind of first in. But my guess is that somebody at some point will attempt to do something similar or compete with us. I mean, it's just the inevitable process of living on the planet.
Yeah, well, for sure. And so the provisional patent that you've got for Oxana right now, your product, is the delivery system, which makes sense. It's hair regrowth. So your local topical application, and it's liposomal. What does liposomal mean, Jay? What is liposomal?
Yeah, it's a good question. And so right now, if anybody was to go to our website and buy it, it's a 2-stage delivery system. We don't even have the liposomal. It's coming. It's in formulation. But right now, it's just a spray, a water-based GHK copper peptide, and then the other bottle formulation is a grapeseed extract. So it's very, very mild oil, which is, again, the nanomolecule carbon-60. But to answer your question, so it's a 2-stage delivery system. When it's 1 stage, the liposomal delivery system will be all encapsulated. So essentially, the oil-based stuff will be in a stable. How would I say it? Kind of like what's the best way to describe it? I'm trying to think. Like when you see an oil-based solution encapsulated inside a water-based solution, which you see that in the supplement industry all the time, that's how ours will be delivered. And so it'll be a 1-phase distribution. Like it'll probably actually be in an applicator. If you've ever seen like those little scalp applicators where you put solution in and then you can kind of like use it. Well, if you're familiar with derma rolling, they roll the scalp and they open all the pores and the follicles. So then you can apply, the application, and it's technically absorbed better. So what we'll probably ultimately do, and we're looking into partnering with some different people right now on this, is put the solution into one of those applicators. Got it. And so they'll just be able to just kind of like, rub it along their scalp line. And one of the actually enhancements to that too that we're looking at, I was telling you off air, is like a red light. So it'll be able to you'll be able to put the water-based in first, red light your scalp, again, open it up, and then put the carbon-60 in after, and boom, just creating like a massive suction to get the GHK into the follicle roots. Okay.
Now think conceptually with me for a minute.
Yep.
Where else can we take this? So let's look at peptides that maybe treat gut health or your adrenals or muscle and tissue repair. Right. I've got a frustratingly recurring rotator cuff injury. I just had PRP injections 10 days ago, just to try. I've never tried PRP before. I'll let you know in a couple of weeks.
Sure.
In addition to everything else I'm doing. But, so I feel like Oxana, your product, it's easy to understand the delivery system because it's got to be local. You want it to be where your hair should be, and it's going to be topical because that makes sense. But when you're treating something like gut health, something internal, the delivery system could be more complex. And if I'm correct, oral applications are very inefficiently absorbed.
Totally.
You can purchase. Yeah. So
almost useless.
Almost useless. Yeah. That sounds about right. I mean, I was at the IPS. I came home with some BPC body protection complex 157 capsules, right? And doing some basic diligence. And I'm like I said, I'm kind of a dummy here, but I'd like to learn maybe 50% best case scenario absorption. Best case scenario, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and that's if you have no inflammation in that microbiome at all, right? If you've got a pathogen in your microbiome, which almost everyone has, who's not using metformin or not using berberine, maybe 10% to 12% bioavailability.
So that's good news to me because if oral absorption capsules aren't the most effective way, that opens up opportunities to accomplish what you've done with your proprietary delivery system. And so what strikes you as the most effective and accessible? Because I know, probably intramuscular or subcutaneous would be the most effective. I don't know. But not everyone's going to be comfortable injecting themselves. That's just a reality, right?
Exactly.
And so I want to look for mass adoption, right? And then I think maybe, dermal applications, smart patches. But what strikes you as maybe places where we should be looking?
It's funny because if you would have asked me this, if you and I would have had this podcast 2 weeks ago, I'd tell you, look, bro, you got to inject it sub-Q. It's a 31 gauge needle. It doesn't hurt anybody. It's perfectly legal. Get a doctor to write you a script. And by the way, just so people have, awareness, and I want to tell you, we'll talk off the show, off air, because my partner he has what is called the Wolverine healing stack. So
Okay.
happy to connect you with that. So he can heal literally. I mean, again, we've had A-list people tear and rip off the bone and completely back to normal. So that's something we'll talk about off air. But to talk about the injectable of the microbiome, you would be using BPC 157, which again, you came home with the capsules, the oral formulation, almost useless. Besides, to get enough, if it was orally, defensible and usable, then you got an issue with the FDA saying, "Oh no, that's a medical drug, and you can't take that orally," and blah blah blah. So, to answer the question, there is new stuff on the horizon. I was talking to the head of research and development for Wells, which is the second biggest compounding pharmacy in the world, there 2 weeks ago, and he said, "Hey man, there's some guys in Ireland that have figured out a 4-stage oral delivery system for everything." And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, you'll be able to take it, and once a year." And it will release, gradually, through osmosis in a very, very delayed, reductive way, for 12 months. And I'm just like, BS. And he's like, "No, it's out there. It's coming." So we are, as you know, Jay, we are on that edge of what I call the golden age of all these wonderful biomedical technologies and obviously drugs and supplements and stuff that are right there at the precipice to be spouted all across the world. But, until that gets there, and, I asked him, I'm like, "When are we looking at that?" And he goes, with development testing and all that stuff, probably by 2023. So, I mean, we're still, for oral delivery systems, we're still a little bit further away. So I think the opportunity is just in getting peptide formulations that are legally usable, without needing FDA clearance or approval or any kind of governance at a dosage measurable enough that you will see people with results. And let me explain that for people. There's a lot of people right now, they're selling GHKCU copper peptide on Amazon. Now, if I bought any of those products, and anywhere from $29.99 to $59.99, if I bought any of those products and tested them, and anyone could do this, you wouldn't find anything. You'd find no active ingredient. If you tested our products, okay, you would find up to the limit of about right under 3%, which is right where the FDA steps in and says, "You're selling a drug, you're done." So, you have to have enough of the active ingredient of the peptide, which causes all these amazing health benefits, before you can actually see results. So that's my answer. My answer is working with brilliant formulators, working with very smart guys who are in the biochemical field, who understand peptides. They understand the function, the methodology, the biomechanical, or not biomechanical, but biomolecular effects, and then getting them, finding that opportunity with that specific peptide and creating products that are going to help people, which obviously is what we're doing right now. Now, I didn't tell you this, and it's very important that I do. Our other two products are serum and cream, also of GHKCU. Now, this cream and serum, and they're used synergistically. You put the serum on face, again, water-based, the cream is oil-based. Okay. They will completely regenerate people's issues in the face, right? What are the issues like melasma, sunspots, rosacea? There's so many different effects or negative issues that people have for the skin. You put GHKCU on the skin at this grade that we do, and people just go crazy. I mean, we have aging women that are like, "Oh my God." My wife's been using it. It's kind of the owner's story. My partner gave it to my wife like 3 years ago, and she started using it. And she's like, "You guys got to sell this. This is insane." Right? So, delivery systems, applicators, again, red light in between using GHKCU from a water-based to an oil-based. So there's tons of other things that you and I could talk about that I think, truthfully, I've had VCs literally already come up to me and say, "We just got to hire, we'll just make Nick an incubator. And you just let him deliver IP defensible products." Because he has so many ideas, right? But that's the answer. Is like, partnering with smart people who understand how to create things that the FDA and the, biomedical big pharma industry is not going to regulate.
Yeah, I'm with you. Well, it ties directly to my first, second, and third criteria of vetting and investment. It's people every single time. Over everything.
Literally, man. Literally, totally.
I will lose sleep over finding the right people and let them lose sleep over the project and the business. Okay, I love it. Jay, let's give the audience a gift just to wrap up here. One environmental factor. If they could just dodge one commonplace something in the diet, something in the environment, in the home, a product? What's something everybody should cross off the list today?
So cross off the list, you should have a filtration system in your house. Like if you're in a major city, and I won't give any because I don't want to sound like a shill. And I'll give a bonus one too, but you should have some sort of filtration system in your shower and of course your water. Now, obviously I definitely do not recommend that anyone drinks from a tap, unless you're, depending on where you are. If you're like in the mountains or a mountain city and you have a well or a spring, but even then, most of the water is contaminated. If you're in any major urban, large coastal population center, you have to have a filtration system for your water because the water is just contaminated. So that's number one. And then the second thing that I would say as a bonus is finding out about deuterium depleted water. Because in the next year or two, as more and more people find out about deuterium depleted water, they're going to freak out. There is a company out there right now that's kind of the leader in that field. They're called Light Water, and you can go to the website. And I actually am an affiliate for them, but I don't care. It's called drinklightwater.com. And you cannot imagine the science that these folks have, but they can prove that it's deuterium in our cells that shortens our life. So basically, if you could get rid of all the deuterium in the biological systems that, are saturated in our body, you would live to 140, 150, no problem. In fact, they have people now, like in, Tibet and, some of these isolated, they've never, been around anything like us. There's no blue light or, any kind of contaminants like endocrine disruptors or whatever. These people are living easily into their 130s and 140s and are still reasonably very healthy and able, not comorbid. They're walking around. So that's going to be a field to look at, I would say, in the next year. And again, just search deuterium depleted water because I think there's only a couple different companies on the market that sell it.
Okay, I will. Look, Jay, it's been great having you on. I want to do this again a few months down the road. And
for sure.
Because it's a sector I'm going to be covering more and more frequently, looking for opportunity. I've been talking about it in my newsletter. It's time to put my money where my mouth is and find some places for capital. So I'm excited. Obviously, we went longer than I thought we would. I knew we would. Look, if you want to hear more from Jay Campbell, jcampbell.com, Jay Campbell Podcast. Where else can people go, Jay, to find you and your content?
Yeah, thanks, brother. I mean, this has been profound. And whenever I get a chance to talk to very smart people, like I said, I'm very grateful. But have them go to JC Campbell because somebody is cyber squatting on my website right now. So it's jccampbell.com. But that's literally kind of my handle on everything. I'm very active on Twitter. It's jccampbell333 on Twitter. And if you want to email me, the best way is to go through my team, which is contact@jccampbell.com. But for sure, gift for everybody who watches this podcast, go to JAY, again, middle initial C, last name spelled out, CAMPBELL.com/free books. And you will get a downloadable copy of the world's #1 selling book of all time on testosterone optimization, which is the TOT Bible. And then also the third highest selling book of all time on intermittent fasting, which is called the Blowtorch Diet. So both of those PDFs are available there for free. And I would definitely encourage people to read them. As you know, the TOT Bible is 650 pages and it is 1,100 studies. It is the Bible because it's the Bible. And there's way more information in there beyond just testosterone optimization. There's all sorts of performance enhancement, fasting, all of that.
Yeah, it's 600 and so pages, but actually, Jay, it reads really, really well.
It's very relatable to average people for sure.
Yeah,
writer helped me.
Yeah, I love how you jump into a lot of the herbal alternatives that are touted, right? And I would call it an epidemic in the health industry is how many supplements are forced, into the market that have no value and are just heavily promoted.
It's so sad. It's literally so sad. Yeah, obviously, that I have Agents of Change chapter in there, and we just destroy anything that's useless.
Yeah. Well, very much like the penny stock business. A lot of garbage out there. You got to be careful. Step with caution, ladies and gentlemen. All right. Well, the link's right there for anybody. Check it out. I recommend that. JC Campbell /free books, but just click that. And Jay, once again, man, it was a pleasure. Thanks so much for your time. As always, if you enjoyed this content, please hit subscribe. I'd love to have you on the team. And if you want to take the next step and go a bit deeper with my content, I publish a free weekly newsletter every Friday where I debrief my portfolio. I distill the top lessons I've uncovered from the guests I've had on this show every week. And I talk about sectors and industries that I think are poised to move, areas that I'm looking for opportunity, and places that I'm allocating capital. I love writing it. We publish every Friday. The link is right beneath this video. Love to have you join the tribe.